Hello, Will here with Draco,
Hi guys.
and we're gonna be doing a review of the game we're obsessed with in fourth through maybe seventh grade, which is Runescape. And Runescape is free to play for part of it, but if you want more content, you have to become a member. So it qualifies under the current trend of what we've been doing, which is reviewing, or what Draco's been doing, which is reviewing games that you need to pay for
Yeah.
and that we can check out for you before you waste your money or don't.
Yeah. And I'd like to say that RuneScape is a massively multiplayer online game, but I would say rather than being in the style of what you'd typically associate with an MMO like World of Warcraft or Terra or Guild Wars, it is it's similar it's closer to something like Baldur's Gate. I wouldn't quite say Planescape Torment, but I would say I haven't really played Icewind Dale or any of the other ones. It's closer to a classic RPG, I would say, than an MMO, or at least it was. I'd say back when we played it. They have an old school RuneScape as well, so I suggest you check that out if you think that what we are talking about sounds interesting, because that's basically what we're talking about. Um,
Yep. Um,
as Will said, we played it for quite a few years. We adventured around the world of Gielinor, buying items and killing unicorns mostly for Will, since he didn't get random people who gave him
for
great
multiple.
armor.
Yep. Very
Uh,
expensive.
yes.
Ugh. Um.
Okay, that was an inside joke. Everyone's gonna be like, "Wow, they're just making inside jokes," and yeah, that's kind of
Yeah.
true.
Speaking of inside references, you compared it to like a bunch of games. You should probably explain like what characteristics about it make them like those games.
Okay, that's a good idea. RuneScape had a huge focus on the world of Gielinor. It was more, at least to me, about exploring the world and its lore and history, rather than just doing the skills and the combat. It was about the quests, and it which I'd say shares, which is makes it very similar to things like Baldur's Gate, where Baldur's Gate didn't really have a very good combat system, in my opinion. It was rather boring, and but it definitely had a good world. It was set in the Forgotten Realm, so obviously it was, and it had good characters. I'd say RuneScape had some good characters, but it was more focused on the world. The atmosphere of each area was dead on. Like, um, right here on the map, you can't see it actually, but there was a place called Mauritania, and that was supposed to be like where the vampires and werewolves were. And I don't know about Will, but that had a huge like feeling of darkness, and like it felt dangerous there and scary in a way. Would you agree with that, Will?
I would. Speaking of, you said we don't have the map. You might be able to link that in the description.
I will. I will link you to the map in the description. You can see part of the map, but you can't see the whole map, because I just picked a random image because we wanted a still image that wasn't black. So this is more along the lines of a podcast than a video.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I I think someone said something about Dark Souls, about how it makes you feel like you're like certain areas in that game make you feel like you're really deep underground. And I first of all, I reviewed that game 2 weeks ago, and it's a great game. And yes, I would agree that that's very much the case. And I'd say RuneScape does a very similar job. Um, you feel the world feels alive in a way. It's uh, in some places dead. If it's supposed to feel dead, it
Yeah.
feels dead. Like the
Um.
desert. Um,
Yeah. The desert is. I never liked going to the desert, which is at least the main one is called Al Kharid in RuneScape, and I never liked going there, and that's because it reminded me of a real desert.
exactly. That's exactly how I felt too. Especially how like you had to have water with you, and
Yeah,
like even
yeah.
that
They
little
they would add
detail.
physical details like you have to bring water with you into the desert, unlike some games that are just like, okay,
Yeah.
just go and do whatever.
Like
Um,
Skyrim, where you can be in like a short sleeve T-shirt in the middle of winter when it's freezing. There are mods for that, by the way,
yeah.
but this also
Or even Legend of Zelda. That's like,
yeah, that's a good
oh
point.
look, this thing rotted, but hey, 7-year-old milk.
That's a good point, actually. Um, and it would actually also you'd if you were wearing armor, it would heat up quicker. You'd have to wear these special robes. Well, you didn't have to. You could wear other stuff, but the special robes were
To
the
die.
best for it. Yeah, to die. Um, I'd say the quests were all very detailed. You didn't get the go kill 10 rats quest. They did later add in tasks. The original tasks were more like achievements, and I loved that system. I thought that was really cool.
Well,
But,
what do you mean to explain to the people that are
um,
currently watching us that are
yes, good point.
like what?
The original task system was like an achievement system where you'd go, and it would be like go and bake a cake while gathering all the ingredients from Lumbridge, and that's the newbie town. That's where you start, and you do it for different areas. There were ones for like the Fremennik areas, which the Fremennik are like
Basically
Viking.
Vikings,
Yeah,
basically
they're like Vikings and a little bit of Native American Indian. Wow, I sounded all PC there for a minute. Um, uh,
Native American Indian Vikings. Let's
okay. Anyway, Indian Vikings. They were really cool. But there were different like little tasks to do, and they'd give you an item if you completed it. I think the Lumbridge ring had the cabbage teleport. Yeah, you remember that, Will?
yes, I do.
That was fun.
I it confused me for a
It
while.
did.
But yeah, you were able to teleport with like cabbages. It was really funky, but it was kind of cool.
RuneScape had
And
a thing for cabbages.
what?
RuneScape
Yeah,
had a
RuneScape
thing.
did like a lot of stuff with cabbages.
Yeah.
So if you're into cabbages,
Yeah,
you
it's a
should
great
really
game. If you're into cabbages, you might as well sign up for life. It's perfect game for cabbages.
yeah.
Um,
I found
but
out the other day, by the way, I don't like play this much anymore. Like I get on once in a great while. I don't need a membership for the amount I play, but I just had to cancel my membership because I forgot I had
yeah, I had it for a while longer than I was playing as well. I hate to admit.
it.
um, but
So that's like $50 down the drain. But
yeah.
um,
Then there's the but back to the quests. The quests I was saying are not like the standard MMO quests where you have to go and kill 10 rats, come back, then boom, you level up. Uh,
which
quests,
are stupid, by the way.
yeah, I agree with that. The quests they did give XP, but it would be very specific. The way the skill system worked was it was pretty simplistic. You'd go and spend hours clicking. Though
Yeah.
you could do the advantage of that is you could do something at the same time. Guess what? I didn't
The
skill.
advantage is you can cheat and you can use bots, but
um, no one did that. At least I never
I
did.
never did that.
Yeah,
Um,
we were lawful goody two shoes even back then.
yes.
Will stop being lawful good, but whatever. Um,
Well,
oh, oh,
I still don't cheat in games.
that's true. That's true. Unlike I don't know. I can't think of someone. Anyway,
I did get a hacked game, but I didn't know it was hacked when I got it.
really? Oh yeah, yeah, the
That
Pokemon
was a
game.
Pokemon game.
Oh yeah, Pokemon.
But it got me some good level 100 stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, I was saying the quests were very detailed. There were some really long quests. But some of the free to play quests that I can think of that were really good were like Black Knight's Fortress, where you
That
were
was
hired by the White Knights, and they were like, okay, we need to break into the Black Knight's Fortress. They're going to use like a magic nuke, and you need to foil this plan. And you had to go and get a cabbage, yes, a normal cabbage this time because they had to get a special cabbage. And you had to infiltrate the fortress and drop the cabbage into the stew and ruin the potion. And that was so cool. You had to like get a disguise. It was so awesome. Um,
yeah. I remember Black Knight's Fortress being one of my favorite quests. Um,
recruitment drive though.
Recruit Drive. I was talking about favorite free to play quests.
Okay, yes.
But uh, we'll get into the free to play membership probably.
Yeah.
And then we should do that. But first I was gonna say Black Knights is a really good illustration of the lore of RuneScape actually being a lot better than most MMORPGs in that it's pretty like easy to understand, but you have like White Knights who are the good guys, Black Knights who are the bad guys. They have a Black Knight's fortress, and then they have a town or city called Falador, which is where most of the White Knights are, and plus you have surrounding towns that will either side sort of with the White Knights and with the good god Saradomin, as well as a bunch of other
Yes, praise be
good
Saradomin.
as well as a bunch of other good gods.
Like Armadil.
Like Armadil. Armadil
Speaking of the gods, I just wanted to say quickly. Did you know that they made Saradomin no longer good? They made him kind of like neutral-ish, and they made Zamorak no longer evil, and they made Bandos evil, and they killed him off actually really quickly, mostly because people like Armadil. I don't blame them.
okay.
Sorry, just
That's
wanted to
really
say.
weird. Um,
Yeah, it is.
but even though apparently that kind of hijacks my point of it being simplistic,
Yeah.
still pretty fun, and the lore is really interesting.
Old school RuneScape. Here's what I'd say about RuneScape. Something I do when I'm creating my world, which is Vorn. If you haven't heard about it, I could tell you all about it, but we're not going to. Um, it's
We are
it's
D&D nerds.
yeah, we are. It's basically it's not trying too hard to be special. A lot of MMOs you see are like, oh, dark, explosions, and then it's like, okay, and now you are the only survivor of one of the millions. What? Bleh. You are the only survivor of one of millions, and it's like, wait a second, what? And it doesn't make a lot of sense usually. The MMO lore usually, I think World of Warcraft had a decent job because they had Warcraft behind it, but it sounded
Yeah,
like that got a little over.
RuneScape is like, let's design a lore, let's spend time, and let's actually even follow some fan suggestions. Whereas other games are like, there is a zombie apocalypse, and you're the only one alive until halfway through the game where you suddenly get a love interest.
Yeah, sort of. I'd say RuneScape isn't trying too hard. Wasn't. I'd say nowadays,
It's a
unfortunately,
little worse as far as that
it's a
goes.
little worse. It's still fairly interesting. Especially now that because it makes a lot of sense. Like it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it makes a decent amount of sense. I prefer to think of it more in the old school sense where we had the good god, the evil god, blah 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 blah, rather than having they think he's good, blah blah blah, because I feel like that was kind of forced in my opinion.
Yeah,
Um, but uh, it has a lot of lore behind everything, and yet it doesn't feel overdone. You don't feel like you're being like the lore is being like forced at you, or like it's not like I feel like MMOs like they force it at you for the first 15 minutes of the game and then they drop it and never talk about it again because you're instead just going to random areas. And RuneScape doesn't really do that. Every time you go, like every quest has a meaningful thing to it, and
yeah.
except for
And
like Cook's Assistant, even that is memorable
um,
because it's the
with
only
the
one like that.
exception of Cook's Assistant, another thing I'd say is not only like every quest is memorable, but sort of like every task. Like in other games, I'm kind of thinking of Pokemon here. It'll be like you go to this town, and then you'll get this little thing, and then the person you were supposed to talk to get the thing is like, no, you actually have to go to the next town and talk to my brother. And I'll be like, what? And
Yeah.
that won't happen in
Well, it does it a little bit.
generally as a
Yeah.
general.
One small favor, cough, cough, cough. Did you ever
Yeah,
beat
and
that
one
quest?
small favor is designed around that concept. But beyond that, um, generally RuneScape is okay. You go there to do this, and then when you get there, you actually like feel like you accomplished something, rather
Yes.
than having
Yes.
to go somewhere else to do the same task that you thought you were doing by going to the first town.
Yeah, I'd completely agree with that. Um, I'd say if they had honestly, the main thing that made me quit RuneScape was because of how grindy it got towards the higher levels. I feel like if RuneScape was a single player game, or not even a single player game, I guess even if it was an MMO, but they with less grind. But that's the problem, MMOs with less grind. If it was a pay once MMO, sort of, there are a few of those out there, like Guild Wars, I think. Um, then I would love that game because then they could cut down on the amount of grinding you do, and it would just be focused on the quests, and those are truly like the world feels great, and another thing they added later on was uh it was lodestones, and basically you could use your home teleport, which originally would only teleport you to one of three places depending on which spellbook you had. Uh, they would now let you teleport to a bunch of different lodestones, which would be throughout the world. So it sped up travel quite a bit because you wouldn't have to go and buy runes every time. First of all, that crashed the law rune economy very, very quickly. Law runes used to be like 7,000 gold because they were used in every teleportation spell. And then suddenly they became like 100 gold, if that, because which is not a lot. That's dirt cheap because no one was using those teleports because you could just home teleport anywhere. And I feel like it really ruins the feeling of crossing the world, which while it did take a lot of time, always felt fun in my opinion. What about you,
Yeah,
Will?
I really did like going around. I actually, I would say that there were times, depending on the quest I was working on, where I would spend more time just kind of exploring the different towns, talking to the different NPCs, um, and like just looking up the lore so I could enjoy the quest more.
That's totally what I did too. That's so
Yeah.
funny. Yeah, I'm not
Um,
surprised, but you
I,
know.
yeah, I mean, there were some quests that I was just like, I gotta get this over with so I
Yep.
can complete a requirement to do another quest.
Uh huh.
But most of the quests, I was like, this is actually really fun, and I'm in no rush, and there we go.
Yeah.
And that's actually another thing. In some video games, it's like either complete sandbox, like
Like.
Minecraft, where you're just like, okay, you can
Or
build.
Skyrim even. Skyrim
Well,
isn't
yeah,
quite
yeah,
complete, but it's
Skyrim,
very
Skyrim,
sandboxy.
Skyrim is kind of close, but
Hmm.
uh, Minecraft, Minecraft,
Minecraft.
Minecraft is the quintessential example where you're just like, okay, you can build, you can fight, you can do whatever, and you can build whatever you want to. And then there are those I like sandbox games. Then there are the like opposite end of the spectrum, which I really hate, which is like, do this. Oh, you don't want to? Shut up and do this.
Most first-person shooters, single-player first-person
A
shooters
lot of
nowadays.
first
Yeah.
person shooters are like that,
Hmm.
and even some like adventure type
Even
games.
Zelda's a bit like that. Like,
Yeah,
or like the
I was
worst
actually
parts of
I was
Zelda
actually
are
gonna
that, I'd
cite
say.
Zelda. I don't like that about Zelda.
Yeah.
RuneScape is sort of in between, where it's like, okay, this is a storyline if you want it, but you can like drop this and start another storyline and another quest. You can be working on like a ton of quests at the
Yeah.
same time. I think last time I checked, I'm working on like six.
Yeah, I was working on like 6 million because I'd just be like, oh, look, a start of a quest.
Yeah,
But I remember the quest I was actively trying to do before I left. Were because I did after a while I did stop doing quests a bit because the clans I seriously hope they put that in old school RuneScape, the new clans, because the clan system was one of the best updates in my
yeah.
opinion.
Let's talk about that for a
Oh,
little bit.
okay, okay. The clan system in old school RuneScape is currently more like a channel. You'd go on and you'd be able to talk with a bunch of people who entered your clan chat, and that was serviceable. It let you turn on loot share as well, and you'd be able to share loot as you'd think. But it wasn't. You didn't really get any permanency from it. It was just kind of like a channel you'd enter. But later on, when was it? 2009, 2010? I think it was 2010.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It was one of
Somewhere in there. It is in the past.
yeah. It was 2010. Is when it started going. I'd say when it started making a lot of changes, and I think I wouldn't say it was quite start. They did a few things that I think were not the best decision, but they did do a lot of things that were good as well. I'd say it started to go downhill around 2010, maybe 2011, and I don't know. I don't remember
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah. 2011.
Yeah, 2011, I'll say. Um,
Um,
and I think 2013 is when it hit its climax and basically changed over to a different game. Uh, but anyway, the clan system came around, and it was really kind of neat. They added clan capes. They made it so it was more permanent. A little after, was it a year after even? I think it might have been a year after. They
yeah.
added clan citadels, and those were awesome. You'd go there and you'd basically build your own cat. Well, I mean, it was kind of limited, but
You
you'd
can
build a castle in
upgrade
the
a
sky.
very basic thing by like doing work there. You can do like mining, wood cutting.
And it
What
had good
else? Uh,
experience too.
yeah, you get tons of experience by doing work there. Um, and
well, it wasn't ton. It was actually less experience, but here's the trick:
well, it
it
felt like
didn't
tons of
require
experience.
any work, like smithing. That's how I got my smithing from like 12 to like. Actually, that's a lie. I had it at like 20 some, but I
Yeah,
got it to like 20 to 50 because there was a place where you could do smithing for experience without having to worry about getting all the bars and stuff.
yeah, exactly. In the normal RuneScape world, you have to travel all over the place for some skills to get the materials. At the Citadel, you can have it um all at once. So even if it's less experience, like you said,
Hmm.
you are actually getting it faster.
Yeah, it was.
And
Yep.
if you
Sorry.
work really long there, you could start to see improvements around your clan castle or
Oh,
whatever.
okay. I thought you were gonna say on your stats. I was gonna be like, this is the problem with MMOs. No, but yeah, you would actually, people would actually choose that. We weren't the people. I did get admin in my clan. I think I'm still an admin there because I think Will got kicked, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Our,
I used to be an admin too. I think I got kicked.
um,
They said they were kicking you.
oh, they did? Maybe they just didn't. Maybe they liked me too
Well,
much.
no, they said they were, and then they're like, "Are you coming on?" And I was on at the time, so I was like, "I think he might come back." So they're like, "Oh, we won't kick him."
Oh,
So I
yeah,
inadvertently saved you.
nice. But it was a really good clan. It was or at least
And I didn't
it
learn from
got
this
changed
either.
a
They
bit.
were like, they asked me if I was coming back. I'm like, no.
Yeah, unfortunately, most of the members we were friends with have kind of left, like us. But I still get on sometimes just to say
There's
hi
still
to them.
that. There's still that creepy 50-year-old lady,
Oh
but
yeah, yeah. Shade said, what's her name? Yeah. Well, if you
she
ever,
was nice, but
yeah,
no.
she was nice, but a little, she was a little weird. I don't know.
She was
Uh,
just like, she was just,
she was on there all the
she was just like,
time.
okay, I'm like going on a farming skill spree. Damn it, gotta feed the kids. And I just feel like, what?
Yeah, yeah. This is the downsides to MMOs. Anyway, but the Clan Citadel was a great thing, is what we're saying, and it also had like fun rooms. Like there was a playroom, even though we didn't do that all that much, because it was a little hard to set up. But there was, I remember there was a playroom, and you could like put on a play, and there was a well, there were a few different things. There were. I remember we played hide and go seek there one time. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
the light was shining in my eyes at that time, so I had to close the curtain. No, I'm just kidding. I just no, but I remember we played. I think we played hide and go seek all over RuneScape one time, and then we had the duel tournaments. The clan update really brought the MMO part of RuneScape into being feeling more like an MMO, and it was a great. It was like one of the best implemented clan systems I've seen ever because it was just enough interaction with the rest of the game to make it so you wanted to join one, but not enough to make it like so it's forced down your throat.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I would say let's talk about the dungeons of RuneScape because RuneScape only didn't have too many dungeons. Uh,
You really like those, though. You like dungeons in most games.
oh yeah, I like dungeons. I mean, they were let's see. There were it wasn't that it didn't have too many. It just they were a little I don't know. There were lots of underground sections, but not all of them were full dungeons, I'd say. Um there was the remember the goblin? Did you do the chosen commander quest line? I mean, we didn't do I never got to chosen commander, but I did like death to the Dorshan.
I did Death to the Dorshan.
Yeah, that was
I think I did another slice of ham, which is the
Oh,
quest.
that's the first one. That's or
Oh no, yeah, that's the first one. I
oh
did.
no, that's the second one. There's like it's like a 8 quest
Yeah,
series.
it's a series about goblins and like suspicious humans that aren't based off religious extremists at all.
Or
Um,
PETA. I always thought of them as like PETA, but kind of like an anti-PETA.
Anti-PETA that want to kill animals.
Yeah, well, yeah, they kind of want to kill monsters.
Yeah.
Um,
But
they also wear nice pink, nice pink outfit.
yeah, they do wear some pretty fashionable pink robes.
Yeah.
Made me almost want to join. Um, but yeah, there's a huge quest series about that. Like what, 7 quests, I think.
Oh, yeah, 7 or 8. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah,
but
don't quote me on that. But
yeah,
like, it's pretty up there.
yeah.
I did like two or three, and so did you, right?
Yeah, I did. I think the last one I did was Death to the Dorshan.
Which
Which
is what, number
I
three?
by the way, I based. I just want to say, RuneScape has been. I'd say even more than Tolkien. This is. I mean, but RuneScape based things off Tolkien, obviously. I would
Oh,
say RuneScape has been one of the big. I don't know if it's even more than Tolkien. It's pretty close. I'd say those are the two most. The where I've got my most of my ideas from uh, for Vorn. I have like the Odierval. They're basically the Fremennik. They're with a little bit of change. I made them a little less united, and I made them a little more stereotypical. But I took a lot of inspiration because they were some of the coolest people in RuneScape, in my opinion. They also worshipped Armadil, who is by far the coolest god, in my opinion.
yeah. I also really like the Fremennik, and I gotta say, not as much anymore because I've like forgotten some of the lore, but I think that RuneScape lore used to influence me a lot when I was like writing stories and stuff, as well as just general thinking about the genre of
Yeah,
being a evil fantasy nerd. I don't know. Um,
it's because it did a good job of it. It was.
it did.
Yeah, I remember. What's another thing I took inspiration from? I um I actually here's a fun thing. So there's a list when you join the Fremennik in the Fremennik Trials quest, which is an amazing quest by the way. That is probably up there as my favorite quest, along with Dragon Slayer. I forgot to mention during the free to play quests that were good. Dragon Slayer was a really good free to play quest. It really felt like a RuneScape quest where you'd go and you'd collect these things to collect these other things, and then you'd go and slay a dragon. That's just awesome. It's stereotypical, but it was good. And whatever. Anyways, I was saying, so you'd get a random Fremennik name when you've completed the Fremennik Trials quest, which I know this was a little disjointed, but whatever. Um, and mine was Denker. I don't remember how it was spelled exactly. It was either with an IR or a UR rather than an ER. I spell it with an ER now, though, but that leads into my point. I use that name to this day because I thought it was a cool name. Um, but I think people read it as Denker rather than Denker, and I think that's a little weird. um,
Um, yeah. Um,
that,
I would agree with your point that a lot of like random little things that we use for like role plays and stuff still are influenced by RuneScape.
it really resonated with us, I guess is what we're saying.
Yeah.
They were
Um,
they referenced a lot of literature. They referenced a million and one different things. First of all, like
yeah. Like
there are pages of
we actually
references.
I never did it because it was actually not a great quest, but just to give a point to the reference thing, they have a quest called the Deadliest Catch.
Oh, I hate that quest. No, we're not
I
talking
know
about
it's
that
bad.
one. I was thinking more Romeo and Juliet, which,
But
by the
yeah,
way, got
I know
removed
there's
because
actually
RuneScape
nothing
was
like it.
embarrassed by it for some reason. They
What?
re- RuneScape was embarrassed by Romeo and Juliet for no apparent reason. And they replaced it with some other quest, which gave you swanky boots, and it was a decent quest.
Yeah.
Um, and then there was what was that place called? Catherbury? Let's see here on the map.
Yeah.
Yeah, Catherby. No, it's Catherby.
Catherby. Catherby.
Catherby, right next to it, and Sears Village. It was between those two. Was Camelot, and that was really cool. You could do like quests. There was some quest involving King Arthur, and I remember really liking that when I was like, yeah. Um, my grandfather even liked watching he play this game because he felt like it was an adventure. I guess that says something about it. I mean, then again, maybe it was just that he was easily amused, but he always enjoyed watching it and like just watching the adventure. Um, and oh, you know what's something we haven't mentioned that was like literally one of the selling points?
What?
The music.
Oh yeah, the RuneScape music. Um. Yeah. RuneScape music was always pretty good for video game music.
It was yeah.
Um. I will say that people that like don't play RuneScape, like my relatives that are like walking by when I was playing it, were like, "That sounds kind of monotonous and it sounds kind of mechanical," and I'm like, "It's a video game music." Um.
The,
But considering it's video game music, it was pretty good even from the start. Now, though, I think starting in like what 2013,
yeah.
um, pretty recently, ish.
They
Um,
reorchestrated it.
they reorchestrated it exactly with like actual musicians rather than just
Yeah.
like synthesize this.
Yeah,
And
that's
they
exactly
added,
what it needed.
I think they added some new tracks too, and
Yeah,
they had a composer that I don't forget. I don't forget his name. I don't remember his name.
I know his name.
What?
I think it was Ian Taylor.
No, that was the original guy. That was the original.
Oh, was there a
The
different guy? Oh, I don't remember
yeah,
his name.
they had James Hannigan. That's it. That's it.
Okay.
Um, and he's like worked with John Williams, and he's pretty good.
Yeah.
And he had he was in charge of that. So now the music in RuneScape is like top
Excellent.
notch.
Yeah. It's the thing is RuneScape always had good melodies and especially the newbie melody.
Yeah,
um,
we should link that down
yeah,
below.
I think we will link that in the description, also known as, the post
Yeah.
because well actually we will be uploading this to YouTube. So yeah, I guess we can link it in the description too. Um anyway, uh I it, yes, RuneScape had good music. It just didn't have good quality. Like the quality, they were all MIDI files because it's an MMO, and they were literally over 500 tracks. I think they broke 1,000 now.
Yeah.
Uh, I remember. I think when I quit playing, they had at least 800.
Yeah.
I remember I got the air guitar emote, which was you get 500 songs unlocked. Oh, that was a accomplishment almost, except not really. I don't know. It was an accomplishment in the game.
It was cool. It was cool.
Yeah, and um, I don't know. They were the music was really good. It always I don't know if it always did, but most of the time it really felt like it fit the area. Like do you know what song I always hear myself singing? Dogs of War. Do you remember that one?
No, I don't.
It's dun da 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 da
Why?
da
Yes.
da 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 da. That was in the Stronghold of Security. That was one of the dungeons, the Stronghold of Security. You'd have to answer security questions to pass through the doors. They
That,
removed
that,
it.
that I thought that was silly. But
It was. That's why they removed it. It
yeah.
was funny though. And the dungeon itself was actually really cool. It had some unique monsters in there, like minotaurs, and each level had a different flavor. Like the first one was war. It was the Four Horsemen. Uh,
Um,
but the next one was famine. I don't remember which one was the third. Was it I think the do you remember what they? I don't know what I'm saying anymore.
did they have like disease?
That famine, I think, was the famine.
Okay.
I think it was. I don't know. They went with
Whatever. You get the point.
Yeah, it was a good dungeon, and I remember you got to the end and you could get rainbow boots. You could also get spiky boots. I chose the spiky boots because I thought they looked cool, and they
I
did.
got rainbow boots because I clicked it by accident. But
You would have to go back all the way down to get the different one, by the way. And then there was also the the other thing, the other security room dungeon that was north of there. Remember?
yeah,
In well, I don't remember what it was called, but that one was cool too, because it had cockroaches in the dungeon, and you'd travel through there, and you could find spiky gauntlets to match your spiky boots. And for a while, those were really like some of the best items in the game. For those, definitely the best in free to play. Not anymore necessarily, but they were. But for a while, they were the best equipment until you got the what's that cooking quest called? Recipe for Disaster. Then
yeah,
they
that
yeah.
was a great quest.
Oh, that was a fun quest because basically Recipe for Disaster was like their 100th quest, right? And what they did was they made one big quest where you have like what was it? A bunch of smaller quests, and it was culinary mancer, and he would
A culinary mancer.
yeah, it was something I don't remember exactly what they called him, but it
Let's just take a moment to appreciate that.
yeah. And he had frozen time with all these important people here, okay? And you had to get foods to like unfreeze them. And I never completed the whole quest because some of the requirements were really high level. But
Yeah.
it was so cool. I think that was one of the biggest issues in RuneScape was there was no middle content. Like a lot of other MMOs, the top content just becomes the middle content.
Hmm.
But RuneScape never like increased its level cap or anything, and I like that. I don't think they needed to, but they needed to create more mid-level content, possibly with scaling enemies for people who want to play it harder. Basically, I think that would have been an easy way to fix it. They did have scaling enemies in one quest. I don't remember what that was, but that was the only quest they ever did it with. Anyway, but you'd have to do a bunch of these mini quests, and there were also other mini quests, like actual mini quests. These were more like medium large quests because or I don't know. They were good little quests though, and you'd have to do them all, and then you'd fight the culinary mancer, and you'd win probably. You'd actually probably die. I don't know. Um,
What was I gonna say? Um, about the middle content, they also did this weird thing with some of the levels, like your combat level, which was basically an amalgamation of like what your HP, your strength level,
it was one combat level for every 3 levels in any combat skill.
okay, thank you.
It was
Um,
which wasn't necessarily a good system. I think,
yeah, that's what I was getting to.
yeah.
It's they had a weird system, especially towards the end, and that was an issue also with RuneScape combat. It They tried to fix it, and they made it a little bit better by allowing you to wield two-handed weapons and do different kind of
You
stuff.
mean dual wield weapons? You said wield two-handed weapons. You were always able to wield two-handed
Yeah, yeah.
weapons.
That's sorry.
Yeah.
To dual wield. Yeah, you were always able to wield two-handed.
And
Um,
as a kid, I always wanted to be able to dual wield, and now that uh, I'm an adult man, that I think that dual wielding is stupid, and I wish they didn't have it. I'm
but then again,
contrary.
they tried to improve the combat system, and it worked kinda, but that was just because their combat system sucked.
Yeah.
Basically, it was not any skill for a while. It was
Other
basically
than
just you
eating
go off
and
and hit,
clicking prayers.
and basically if you're a higher level, as long as you have at least equal armor, you're going to win. So if you put more
Well,
time in,
no, not
even if
necessarily.
you're
It was randomized a little bit
it
on
was
how much it
slightly
hit.
randomized, but it's like if I'm level 77, you're 76,
Yeah.
then you might win. But if I'm level 77 and you're even like 70, I'm going to win.
Yeah, that was kind of well, unless the other levels were for something you weren't using, like ranged or magic, and you were using
Yeah,
melee.
yeah,
By
yeah.
the way, that was I did actually kind of like the weapon triangle and how it worked. I mean, ranged was basically the worst one, but magic did a lot of damage, but was really expensive. And melee was kind of inexpensive. And even though it kind of made it unbalanced, it was really interesting because you had like most people would be I don't know. It added like a sort of tiering, and you wouldn't get as many mages as you would fighters, which would make sense in a world, right? But they did eventually change that a bit, and I think that's probably for the best because it is a game first rather than a storytelling experience. But
Although I do play a lot of games for the storytelling.
yeah, Dungeons and Dragons.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, for anyone who watches this is probably gonna also
yeah,
like D&D.
yeah.
When I DM, I'm just like making up a story and letting the characters kind of help me make it up. I'm rarely asked for roles, and that's partially because I'm not super familiar with all the intricacies of the rules.
It's almost
Um,
always because he's not familiar with
um,
the rules.
yeah, and
I,
other
I wonder if
reasons.
people actually hear that whisper. Probably. Anyway, sorry.
Um, if you didn't, audience, he was just making a snarky comment that I
Yeah.
have no idea what I'm doing. Um, which I'll freely admit to. But it's not even just that.
Yeah.
I just like the storytelling aspect as well.
Yeah.
So
I've played in several campaigns. Typically, I DM in a more game-focused way because it's what I do best. I'm good at creating interesting items, though I'm bad at traps, which is odd. But this isn't
I'm
RuneScape,
sure
so
okay.
I've like barely used traps. When did you? I don't know. Whatever.
In like a dungeon, I think.
Okay. Well, anyway, we're gonna actually let's use this to lead in. Do you remember there were traps in RuneScape dungeons a few times, and they were usually pretty good. Um, like I'm thinking of the armor stands in the Tal'Vari dungeon. You remember you'd cross them and suddenly they'd come to life?
I do.
That
Yeah.
that was I always thought that was cool. And there are a few other dungeons. Oh, do you I don't know. Did you ever do you remember Ardone? Ardone was a I didn't like Ardone at all. Like
I like Ardone.
I liked Ardone and yet I didn't. Like I didn't like the plague thing. That kind of freaked me out. I don't like getting sick. I wash my hands so often it's crazy.
Oh yeah, Ardone, by the way,
Um
is
the
supposed to
plague
be
city.
yeah,
Well, half of it is.
it's a city divided into East and West Ardone, and one of them was it which one was it?
It was West Ardone that had a plague
Okay, West
supposedly.
Ardone. Supposedly you'd have to do a quest called Plague City to find out more, but
And then Biohazard. You Plague
and then
City, you don't learn it. It's Biohazard. You learn that.
right.
Spoilers.
But
It's not a
um,
plague.
but yeah, there's supposedly a plague there, and probably by the way we're talking about it, they can figure out that there's not quite what it seems, but
Yeah.
it's a fun quest, and Ardone is basically a germ-ridden city. At least half of it
Yeah.
is.
But I was gonna say, did you ever do the quest that came after that, which was the hidden passage or the passage whatever, where you'd go into that cave? It was really really cool. It was like this long dungeon. Okay.
Yeah,
You actually had to kill some paladins, unfortunately. That was my least favorite part about the quest. I wish there was a diplomatic option there. Um, but that was the main issue with that whole dungeon was I felt like it was a bit of a railroad, but it had some really cool traps like poison gas, and I remember you had to create like a voodoo doll for this bad guy Ibane. Yeah, you remember Ibane, right? I remember we read about this, but do you remember Ibane or what's his name?
I'm trying to think.
He had a
Not off the top
staff.
of my head, but probably when you start talking about him, I'll
I
understand.
don't remember exactly what he did. I mean, we all remember Melzar the Mad. He was part of Dragon Slayer. Melzar the Mad.
Melzar the Mad was a great wizard in that he was kind of low level. He was mid level, if
Yeah.
anything. And he would just kind of scream nonsense because what was he driven mad by? Just like the thought of the dragon being around still.
I don't remember. I actually don't remember that. Oh gosh. We need to go and
I think that would make sense. Anyway,
yeah.
you had to have like certain pieces of a map to understand where the dragon was, and Melzar had them.
Yeah. Well, he had one of them. And then
He
I
had one
remember
of them.
one of them was with the dwarves, which the dwarves were really good in this game, I think. They were kind of neutral. Like usually dwarves are associated with good. I'd say these dwarves are kind of like true neutral. They were some like some dwarves that were more chaotic. I wouldn't say some of them were kind of lawful. I don't know. Whatever. They were pretty varied, which was interesting. And I was going to say that about the thing, Ibane and what's his name. He was he. I remember the hidden passageway, right? You'd complete that, and this is I'm gonna lead into a point here after this. Well, I'm just basically speaking my thoughts. This is weird. Anyway, you'd so when you completed that, you'd come out on the other side, and it was with you were in this world with the elves, okay? And this like the elves are secluded in RuneScape, but you don't see them all over the place like you do in most areas. I mean most fantasy worlds. These ones like wanted to be left alone, and they were up north, and you had to like find out about a bunch of other things. But basically, I remember there were traps there too. Like I remember I stepped on something and it one shot me. And I was like, whoa. Um, but it really like when you'd complete a quest, it would usually like unlock something that would do something meaningful. Even fishing contest where you'd complete that quest. It was probably a 15-minute quest, right? And you'd suddenly be able to travel under White Wolf Mountain, which was basically a level barrier. It was like if you aren't strong enough to survive these wolves, you cannot cross here.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, you could run across, but it would be kind of dangerous.
I tried to do that a bunch of times, and I kept getting stuck because my mouse would just be like, "Oh, you want to go over there? Let's go the long way."
Yeah, and it was a really confusing place to cross as well. And I think that was actually a good effect, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Um, there was also a dungeon there. I guess there were more dungeons than I thought there were.
There were a lot of dungeons, but like there were a couple that were like really good, and there were a couple that were just like, "What is this?"
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Remember Varrock Sewers? That was kind of cool.
That was cool.
Um, but like everything you do, Even well, I don't remember what the quest was, but there was some quest you had to do to get into Mauritania, and like it would always feel like you're unlocking new areas to explore. And something with modern RuneScape is it stopped doing that a bit. Like they stopped making the quests meaningful. You'd be able to teleport to them. I remember there was some quest I got on and did because it seemed kind of cool. And they you could teleport like instantly to where they told you. Um, and I felt like that took away from the experience. It's like there's no traveling, and you don't get the feeling of being an adventurer. You're just doing a quest for the sake of a quest. And they added voice acting. Um, Honestly, I don't like the voice acting. I liked it better when there was no voice acting. Um, it's not that the voice acting's bad. I just feel like it wasn't made for the game. But um, but yeah, there was something I was going to lead this into. Instead of trying to lead it into something, let's go to something completely different. The God Wars dungeon. Was that not cool?
The God Wars dungeon was great. I went there, I think, mostly with you,
Yeah,
um, and
in the clan.
yeah, and the rest of the clan. Um, but basically, it was a lot of like you trying to convince the rest of the clan to go there.
Yeah, because
Um,
I think that because there wasn't a whole lot you could. The thing is, like the problem was you'd usually just get money and then buy something off the Grand Exchange while someone else grinds for it. But I wanted to like go and beat up the bosses there because that was something I think RuneScape had a fault with, and that was not enough interesting bosses. I mean, the only mid-level boss in the game, there were no low-level bosses really, other than maybe some quest bosses, right? But none that you could actually go out and find. Was this giant mole, and he was kind of fun, except not at all because he'd go and dig, and you'd have to go and chase him somewhere and hope you find him. Um, but all the other ones were really high level. Excuse me, really high level, like the Calphite Queen, or the King Black Dragon, um, or the God Wars bosses. And the God Wars dungeon is a good example of lore meeting gameplay. Uh, Basically, in the third age of RuneScape, was it the third age? It was the third age. I'm pretty sure. That was a really cool quest. Did you ever do the one where you got to go back in time and see Guthix and like the first humans?
no, but I really wanted to.
That was a fun quest. I don't remember what the requirements were. I thought it was pretty simple too. I don't know. It was a fun quest. Um, but anyway, you and there were whatever. I'm not going to discuss that quest because it's kind of long. Not really. Whatever. The God Wars dungeons basically during the Third Age, the gods were all about and they were fighting. And one of the reasons Armadil kind of like you hear about him and then you don't. You only hear about him a bit. I mean, nowadays you hear about him all the dang time because the gods are back. Surprise! Guthix died. Um, but anyway,
Hey, spoiler alert.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's kind of like the whole thing in the newer game, so
Yeah,
whatever.
no, I'm
They kept it spoiler free for a bit. I was a little surprised that Guthix died. I sided with Guthix on that one too, rather than mostly because I wanted the gods to stay sealed up. Anyway, long story. Um, but basically, this is where the war is still being fought, even though the God Wars are long ended. The war is still being fought. And it was all in that one dungeon, and you'd have the NPCs attacking them, and they would attack you unless you wore something of their little group. So like an Armadale pendant or um, a Saradomin. I don't remember, like maybe a Saradomin Castle Wars thing. Did they? That was cool. The Castle Wars. That's something we forgot to discuss. The mini games.
Yeah, that's true.
The mini games were like the best thing about well, okay, it's not the best thing about RuneScape, but it was one of the best things about RuneScape. Um, like even though the combat was really boring, the mini games all felt really interesting. Even Soul Wars, which I didn't really play because it was laggy as heck, that was a pretty interesting game.
That wasn't just me. For a while, I thought it was just me, but you would like what was it? You could enter either like the blue team or the red team, and
Hmm.
then you would have to fight both different monsters and the other players. And
And
I would like,
capture and
and
like I
yeah,
don't. It was very complex, and I think I
yeah,
confused little
it was
me.
actually it was one of the more complex mini games. But I
Yeah.
would like enter say the blue barrier,
Hmm.
and then it would like boot me out because it was like you've been lagging for 10 minutes, and then it would just be like, oh, we found a spot, and then just put me on the other team.
Yeah, I had that issue as well. It was really laggy, which is why I didn't play it very often. Let's talk about better mini games. I mean, that game was pretty fun, even though it was a little weird. But there was like pest control. Pest control would be where you'd go and you'd get on a boat, and then the boat would sail to this island where portals would open up and creatures would start swarming out, and you had to defend this. Your I don't remember what it was. It was something, and you'd have to kill these creatures and destroy the portals. And it was a fun mini game. Um, and then there was Castle Wars, which is your standard capture the flag, but not just. It was a standard capture the flag on a non-standard field. It was you'd basically besiege the enemy's castle, but not only besiege it, you'd have to you could go underground and like sneak in, or you could like take the front and destroy it, and then you'd take the flag and you'd run back to your base, and people would be chasing you. It was a great game. Even though it was pretty, you'd get crushed if you were lower level. But I mean,
No,
some
not if you did what I did, which is just set a bunch of barricades on fire.
That's a good point. I forgot about the barricades for a second. The barricades, you could block certain spaces. You know what? I bet we could recreate that in D&D and it would be really good.
That would be great, actually.
Okay, we're gonna have to do that. I wanted to do that in Minecraft sometime. I bet we still could do. I bet you could do that now, especially with command blocks. But I don't want
Yeah.
to. I don't want to go and do that.
And
We'll get
you could
Sharpie. We'll be like Sharpie.
probably do
Make
something with redstone.
yeah. Well, command blocks are redstone, but even
Oh, you
better.
said and blocks. Never mind. Okay.
I think what we'll do is we'll get Sharpie to do this for us. Anyway,
Sounds good.
so Sharpie, get on that. Um, but then there was I didn't play enough Clan Wars. Like I didn't play it, so I didn't really. That was the old version of Clans too. So I don't really know what to say about the clan. You know what we didn't mention? The Wilderness. The Wilderness is a great
I
example.
missed that.
The Wilderness is basically a PvP zone. You'd have to go there for only a few quests, but it was really neat because a lot of PvP in modern games, Dark Souls aside, is set in like an arena or something, right? Or a preset area. Well, yes, the Wilderness is a preset area, but it's like it feels like well, the flavor of it doesn't feel like an average area, but like there are different obstacles and there are like castles, and it adds a unique feeling to the PvP that goes on there. Very much like Dark Souls, where Dark Souls you can literally PvP anywhere, which I think is awesome. And for a while they did that with PvP worlds, but PvP worlds weren't good because they screwed up the loot system mainly. Um, Otherwise, I probably would have preferred them. But the Wilderness had a dangerous feel to it. Like you'd get a warning, like when you were going up to it, and it'd say, "Warning, you can die here, and you'll lose your stuff." There were like reverence that went around and would like one shot you. They'd say they're like combat level 56, but guess what? They really are like twice that level.
Yeah.
Uh, I remember they were scary as heck.
Also in the wilderness, you mentioned there was the PvP aspect of things.
Mhm.
This kind of went off and on because uh, Jagex, which is the company that runs RuneScape, is silly. But for a while, it was great. You could go into the wilderness and you could just PvP, and that
Yeah.
meant you could like get tons of loot if you had like any friends.
Yes. The other issue, yeah, there were certain areas that you couldn't do. It would be no ganging on, and certain areas that would be ganging, and that was a decent system.
Yeah.
They had a better name for it. It was like multi combat or something. But they also had the issue that the combat level, like the main issue with PvP worlds was they added in like the idea of being able to go on a world and just PvP is sounds great, but then you have the issue that it's suddenly
Really laggy.
yeah, really laggy, and you can only attack people within like 5 combat levels of you, which basically encourages you to like min max your build, whatever. which doesn't work well with RuneScape, I'd say. Uh, and you'd have to like you wouldn't get the loot they dropped. Like they'd lose all the items, but you wouldn't get those items. So you'd get like a random drop table, and there were chances to get some really good items. But in order to do that, you'd have to put the maximum. You'd have to put like 75K at risk or something. And it was just a silly system. It was so much better when it was simpler, even if it was less balanced.
Yeah, I remember I I went into a PvP world just to see what it was about, and I was in Lumbridge, which again is the sort of noob town, and it's where everyone home teleports to, so it's really populated. There were like tons of people. I immediately froze. I started like clicking randomly, and then it's like you have killed so and so. I'm like cool,
I was there
and
for
then
that.
I went and tried to pick it up, and then it froze again. I'm like, that's fine, it froze. At least I got loot. And then when it unfroze, I was dead.
Oh.
And I'm just like, what is this?
I think I remember being there for that actually, because I think we did it together. I
You
think we were
might
like, let's
you
try
might have you
PvP.
might have been. I think something similar happened to you. That was the problem.
Yeah, it wasn't an amazing system, but whatever. They did bring back the wilderness eventually, but I think they kept the stupid systems, so they didn't fix the problem. Thanks a lot, Jagex. Um, but anyway, the wilderness was a cool area, is what we were saying. It had that scary feel to it. Um, RuneScape was so very atmospheric. That's what I'd say. It was you could like when you'd go to an area, you'd get that feeling. Like um, all of like the Catherby, Sears Village, Ardone, that all felt very like very medieval fantasy King Arthur. Lumbridge and Varrock and Lumbridge and Varrock, I'd say, all felt very like Varrock felt like your typical like kind of junky city with the Grand Exchange. Though it had some classy parts, it felt like a city. And Lumbridge felt like a nice town, and Falador felt like White Knight Land,
Yeah.
and Mauritania felt like a marsh with vampires and werewolves, and that's what it was. The atmosphere was spot on, is what I'm saying.
Yes.
Will's just like yes. um,
Um. No, I'm
Karamja,
just looking. Just
even
like
though but
some random noise happened, and I'm just like, it's midnight. I hope
yeah.
I haven't woken anyone up, or a burglar isn't about to knock me out. Um.
Yeah. The other thing is we were, or not we. I was really bad at pronouncing names when I was little. I mean, I screwed up so many names.
Oh
We're
yeah,
not.
I remember there was this town called Port Siram, and you were
Yeah,
just like, no, it's Sumeru.
I don't remember. D- yeah, I was. I don't know. I don't even know. um, but
And
speaking
you were
of
just like,
ports,
but I know other people that say it's called Sumeru, and I'm just like, they're wrong too.
uh, um, so but I was going to say that actually does lead into the pirate's treasure quest and the pirate quests that I never did. So actually, I can't speak about those. But there was Karamja, which was a jungle, and that was atmospheric too. So I'm just gonna say that,
Yeah.
even though I didn't like it very much. Um,
Now, um,
pirate quests look pretty great.
I
I
don't
just
know why this reminded me. The mention of Chromja, was that a free to play? That was Members Quest, right?
Karumja had a few areas that were free to play, but most of it was members. Pirate's
Okay.
Treasure was not members though. That was a pretty fun free to play quest where
Yeah,
you see a
that's
drunken pirate and you're like, "Hey," and he's like, "I treasure blah," and then you'd go and you'd go to this island and then you'd have to like hide some rum and bananas so it'd tell you where it was, and then you'd go to Varrock and you'd have a room key and you'd go in and you'd find an area which told where his treasure was, and then you'd go and dig up the treasure, and it was actually kind of underwhelming, but it was a really fun quest.
it was fun.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, that actually reminds me. We should like probably wrap this
I was
up
just going
ish.
to say we just hit an hour just that second, so
Oh, okay.
so let's
So
finish it up here.
so what I was gonna wrap it up with was asking if that was free to play or members. Let's just quickly go over like what
The pros and
why should
cons.
you be a member? Like you can get a lot of pretty awesome content
Okay.
free to play. Let's assume that you check it out,
Mhm.
which we can put another link to runescape.com in the link,
Yep.
but you
I'll
don't.
link to both RuneScape and old school RuneScape because
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
both.
that's a good idea. They have several versions based off like the thing they first released, and then they have like RuneScape.
RuneScape classic RuneScape isn't available anymore actually.
Oh, it's not.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's based off like an older version of RuneScape, and they used to have the classic RuneScape, and they have several different versions of the game. But anyway,
There's two. It's the modern one and the like
they
2007
had, they
one.
had RuneScape 2 too.
No, RuneScape 2's gone. It's 2007 like our when actually it's a little earlier than we start playing. I started playing in 2008. I think you started in 2009.
No, no, I started 2008
Oh
as
yeah,
well.
you just started later that year.
Yeah,
Um and
and
they
then I quit for a while.
oh yeah, that's oh yeah. So you did start in 2008, but you didn't come back to it until like 2009 or 2010. I think it was 2009. Anyway, but there was by the way, the person who introduced this to me was Barca of all people. Uh, so that's funny. Um, but I was saying we are saying why should you become a member?
That's a friend of ours for all the
Yeah.
definite
Well,
strange
come on.
you're gonna get.
It's we're gonna it's a Swords of Light post. Um,
Yeah,
and so let's typically I end off with a um overall RuneScape, blah 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 blah. But we should first talk about why you should be a member.
yeah,
Um, being a member expands the world like you get like four times the size of the norm of the free to play world. I think maybe more than that. You get there's a lot of some of the best quests. I'd say some of the deeper quests come in the membership. Um, you get it has the whole desert, Mauritania. Oh yeah, I wasn't counting the wilderness in the free to play area. The wilderness is free to play. You get the Fremennik lands. You get the God Wars dungeon. You get pretty much most of the stuff. You get some things even in the area like Lumbridge. You get to do things in Lumbridge Swamp, even though you could already go there. They added more stuff to there.
yeah.
Um,
It's a lot of extra territory. It's like
yeah,
almost twice the world because
it's in the
there's this mountain
quests. It's
range called
like
like Icy Mountains, I think,
yeah.
and they sort of divide what you can play for both. And
Well, it's a little earlier than that actually. The what,
yeah, it is
but
earlier than that.
but
But
yeah.
around that mountain range, it divides into this whole new members world where they have like gnomes. I think they have elves
Yeah,
now.
no gnomes. Well, the elves have been there for a while. You just never got to see them because they were recluse. The gnomes, though, yes, the gnomes are really cute. They're kind of like garden gnomes in a way. Uh,
Yeah,
but yeah, the quests. I think there is. Let's see if there's. I think I'm being a little generous, but say there's 40 free to play quests. How many members? I don't know how many there are now, but I think there were at least 200 members quests.
there's more than that.
Yeah, I think it's probably getting to 300 members quests. They say you shouldn't play it if unless you're 13, but that's a bunch of
That's BS.
yeah. Nice job, Will. We're like it's completely clear. You're like that's BS. uh, but but yes, it's you could. It's a very family friendly game, and it's a really good game. I highly recommend it. I'd say overall, old school RuneScape. What would you say it gets, Will?
If you're rating it like what, one to
A
ten?
blank out of 10.
Okay. Old school RuneScape, I would say gets like 8 out of 10. It still had some like bugs,
Yeah.
but it was really good. It was pretty much my first MMO RPG,
Mhm.
and therefore generates a lot of nostalgia as well.
Yeah.
So I may be biased because of that, but I would say it's pretty up there.
I would say that RuneScape for me probably gets. I'd say probably an 8 out of 10. Though that is being a little generous because we did kind of we're kind of here and we're like nostalgia man. The quest not the quests. I mean the skills were a bit grindy and the combat was bad, but everything else was just so good. It was it was just a great game. It is it well. It was a great game, and old school RuneScape continues to be a great game. I'd say overall, I give RuneScape an 8 out of 10. And I would say I recommend you to at least play the free to play. Do the Black Knight's Fortress quest because it does start off very slow, and if you aren't intrigued, if you aren't an 11-year-old person who's I might have been younger than that, I don't know. If you're not like, whoa, it's a whole new world, then yes,
You
it's
start singing.
yeah. if it's if you don't go, have that happen, it will take a while to pick up, but some of the quests are just worth your time, and I highly recommend it. And with
One
that,
tip: join a clan or join with a friend.
yeah,
So,
by the way, if any of the Swords of Light members here, we've already talked about it a little bit. I'd be willing to do a free to play old school RuneScape playthrough of it. I'd love because it was a good game, and I'd like to nostalgia it. And I don't think I'll go back to playing it, and I don't think I'll ever complete some of the larger quests, unfortunately. But for the time I played it, it was a great game, and I recommend you at least try the free to play. Uh, so, without, how do I usually end it? You can leave a comment and talk about how great we are. This is the first time we've done a little discussion on through a video. It's mostly because I didn't have a game to review, and Will and I were like, "Hey man, RuneScape's a good game, man. Let's talk about RuneScape, man." So, so now we've talked about RuneScape for over an hour, and
yeah.
I think we'll leave you with that. And
Sorry if it's been a bit confusing to
yeah,
those that haven't played it. A lot of the terms that we have, if we don't define terms, just kind of look them up.
yeah.
There's a nice site that you might also want to link. That's the RuneScape wiki.
Okay. Wow. Will's giving me all this work. He's like, "Oh, so you'll want to link this and this?" Okay.
I am the master of links.
Yep. And we should
And
do the tags. That'll be fun. Putting up the tags. Just like we're just gonna name every single location in RuneScape for
yeah,
the tags.
no, do all the tags and then just put like random stuff to be like, I don't want to live on this planet anymore.
All right.
Just put,
So
like,
I hope you didn't think like you actually at this point you probably stopped like 30 minutes ago, if not earlier. So we're gonna do you a favor and stop now. I hope you've enjoyed, and we'll see you 2 weeks from now, and we'll see you next week, with roleplay and reviewing.
all
Goodbye.
right, bye.